Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. Pakistan Mini Budget 2021. My dear viewers, PTI government at the outset of 2022 tabled a proposal named as Mini Budget 2021 in a bid to collect rupees 343 billion in order to proceed with the $6 billion facility which was being negotiated with the IMF last year. I may mention that Pakistan has already received out of 6 billion, $2 billion each, one in 2019 and then in 2020. While it came to negotiations on $1 billion for the third tranche, the IMF made conditional upon the government of Pakistan to arrange additional rupees 700 billion in order to proceed further. Since this 700 billion was a lot of money, government of Pakistan officials negotiated with IMF officials to reduce the burden as they could afford. Consequently, in a review meeting held in September 2021 in Washington, it was agreed that instead of 700 billion rupees, an amount of rupees 343 billion should be arranged for the time being. On the government of Pakistan, it was a big challenge to arrange. The challenge confronted to the government of Pakistan was arranging this amount should be in a manner that a common man is not hit. The way found by the government officials was instead of imposing new taxes, the exemptions being availed by different sectors of the economy in the terms of income tax and sales tax exemptions were withdrawn. Additionally, some amount was made available by taxing some luxury items. This proposal was finally approved by the Pakistan National Assembly on January 13, 2022. But my dear viewers, I may mention that the proposals explained in this video would become enforceable only when approved and to the extent that are approved by the Senate of Pakistan. Now, let's look what the Finance Minister of Pakistan has to say on this subject.
سارا جو اس وقت جو باتیں چل رہی ہیں اس میں کوئی حقیقت نہیں ہے. تقریباً 700 بلین روپے کی انہوں نے ہمارے سے بات کی, جس کے بیچ میں انکم ٹیکس وغیرہ بھی تھا, جس میں ایگزمپشنز تھیں کوئی انکم ٹیکس میں, جس میں آپ کا پروویڈنٹ فنڈ ہے اس کے اوپر جو ایگزمپشن دی گئی ہے انکم ٹیکس کی وہ بھی تھا, اور پھر سیلز ٹیکس کے اوپر ایگزمپشنز کی بات ہوئی. تو یہ سارا جو 700 ارب روپے کا جو بل تھا اس کو ہم نے 343 بلین پہ لے کے آ گئے. 343 بلین جب لے کے آئے تو اس کا مطلب یہ نہیں ہے کہ 343 بلین کے ہم نے نئے ٹیکس لگا دیے. یہ بیسیکلی ایگزمپشنز ہیں جو اوور اے پیریڈ آف ٹائم جس کا داؤ لگتا تھا وہ آ کے اپنے پروڈکٹس کو ٹیکس ایگزمپٹ کروا دیتا تھا. تو اس کا بہت ہی سمپل میں آپ کو یہ بتا سکتا ہوں تاکہ یہ آج ابہام ہی ختم ہو جائے کہ یہ ٹیکسوں کا بوجھ لوگوں پہ پڑے گا اور یہ مہنگائی ہوگی. 343 ارب روپے کے ایگزمپشن جو ہیں وہ ہٹائی گئی ہیں, جس میں مشینری کے اوپر اور اس کے پروڈکٹس 112 ارب, فارما کے اوپر 160 ارب, اور باقی جو ہے جس کو ریسٹ آف دی گوڈس کی بات کریں تو وہ تقریباً 71 ارب. اب مشینری کا 112 ارب جو ہے وہ ریفنڈیبل ہے اور ایڈجسٹیبل ہے. اس کا مطلب ہے کہ آپ ٹیکس ضرور دے دیں گے جب یہ امپورٹ کریں گے, لیکن اس کے بعد یہ ریفنڈ ہو جائے گا آپ. اور ہم نے اس کے اوپر ایک اور آگے چیز کہہ دی ہے کہ یہ جو ہے یہ 7 دن کے اندر ریفنڈ ہوگا, اور اگر 7 دن میں ریفنڈ نہیں ہوگا تو ایڈجسٹیبل ہو جائے گا، آپ کسی اور ٹیکس کے اگینسٹ اس کو ایڈجسٹ کر لیں. سیلز ٹیکس کی اگر آپ کے پاس ہے اگر وہ ٹیکس، اس کے اگینسٹ ریفنڈ کر دیں. اگر انکم ٹیکس بھی آپ نے پے کرنا ہے ایف بی آر کو، اس کے اگینسٹ کر دیں. یہ تو میرے خیال میں ہمارے جو بزنس مین ہیں اور باقی لوگ ہیں، انہوں نے جب یہ بات سنی چند نے تو انہوں نے کہا یہ تو کبھی ہوا ہی نہیں پاکستان میں. کیونکہ وہ حالانکہ میرے لیفٹ میں بیٹھے ہوئے ہیں ہمارے چیئرمین ایف بی آر، وہ کہہ رہے ہیں کہ سیلز ٹیکس جو ہے ہم آج کل 48 گھنٹوں میں دے رہے ہیں. تو میں نے کہا یار 48 گھنٹے نہیں، 7 دن میں کر دو، لیکن کنفرم کر دو. تو نہ صرف وہ 7 دن میں ہوگا، انہوں نے ایک اور چیز کہہ دی، انہوں نے کہا سر اس کو آپ ایڈجسٹل بھی کر دیں کہ یہ ایڈجسٹ ہو سکتا ہے. باقی فارما کا 160 بلین ہے، وہ بھی ریفنڈیبل ہے اور ایڈجسٹیبل ہے. اب رہ گیا 70 ارب روپے. 70 ارب روپے کے اوپر اگر ہم دیکھیں تو لگژری آئٹمز ہیں اس میں ایک کوئی بزنس کے آئٹمز بھی ہیں. اب لگژری آئٹمز میں کیا ہیں؟ امپورٹڈ سٹیکس ہیں، فش ہے، سامن لوگ منگوا رہے ہیں، ہائی اینڈ بیکری آئٹمز آ رہی ہیں، برانڈڈ چیز آ رہی ہے، امپورٹڈ ساسیجز آ رہے ہیں، امپورٹڈ بائسیکلز ہیں. اس سارے 71 ارب میں آپ کو یہ میں بتانا چاہ رہا ہوں کہ کامن مین کے اوپر 2 ارب روپے کے جو ٹیکسز کی ایگزمپشن نکال رہے ہیں، صرف 2. سو کھودا پہاڑ نکلا چوہا، مطلب پہلے تو 700 ارب روپے کی بات ہو رہی تھی، اس کو نکال کے 343 بلین ہوا، اس میں سے کامن مین پہ 2 ارب روپے. اچھا وہ کیا چیزیں ہیں وہ بھی میں آپ کو بتا دیتا ہوں کامن مین کے لیے. اس میں بڑا آئٹم جو ہے وہ پرسنل کمپیوٹرز ہیں، سوئنگ مشینز ہیں، میچ باکسز ہیں، آئیڈیوائز سالٹ ہے، ریڈ چلیز ہیں اور کانٹرسپٹیوز ہیں. یہ ہیں. اس سے اگر مہنگائی بڑھ جائے گی اس 2 ارب سے تو پھر میرا خیال میں تو ہم بات صحیح نہیں کر رہے نا. تو یہ ہے لب لباب کہ ہم اس لیے لگا رہے. اچھا یہ پھر جب ہم نے یہ کہا کہ ہم اس میں ایگزمپشن وہ دے دیں گے ریفنڈز، تو آئی ایم ایف نے یہ کہا کہ یار پھر تم پیسے کیسے اور بیچ میں بڑھاؤ گے. تو ہم نے کہا یار اس کا مقصد پیسے بڑھانا نہیں ہے، اس کا مقصد ریونیو اکٹھا کرنا نہیں ہے. ہم نے وہ تو ویسے ہی کر لیا ہے، ہمارا تو اس وقت ہم اپنے ٹارگٹ سے زیادہ جا رہے ہیں. یہ ہے ڈاکومنٹیشن کی، اور ان کا بھی یہی مقصد ہے کہ آپ اس کو ریکارڈ کریں اور اس کے بعد بے شک اس کو ریفنڈ کر دیں. لیکن وہ جب ڈاکومنٹیشن ہو جائے گی تو اس کے ساتھ جو انکم اور آئے گی، جو پرسنل انکم آئے گی، جو انکم جو اداروں کی انکم ہوگی، اس کے اوپر تو ٹیکس لگے گا. کیونکہ ونس your stream is documented، تو آپ کو معلوم ہے کہ ڈاکومنٹیشن کے بعد جو ہے وہ سارا کام پھر سے صحیح جگہ سے شروع ہوتا ہے. ہاں اب وہ لوگ یہ کہیں کہ ہم نہیں ڈاکومنٹ کرنا چاہتے، اگر نہیں ڈاکومنٹ کرنا چاہتے تو اس کو ریفنڈ بھی نہیں ملے گا، تو آپ کو ڈاکومنٹ تو کرنی پڑے گی. تو یہ ایک طریقہ ہے اور بڑا اچھا طریقہ ہے کہ بھائی ہم یہ نہیں آپ کو کہہ رہے کہ ہم آپ پہ بوجھ ڈالنا چاہتے ہیں ٹیکسز کا، آپ ریفنڈ دے دیں، اور وہی ہم کر رہے ہیں. میں نے آپ کو بتایا کہ جو بیسیکلی بڑے 2 مشینری اور اس کے بعد فارما ہے، اس کے اوپر ہم بالکل ٹوٹل ریفنڈ جو بن رہا ہے وہ میں نے بتا دیا 112 بلین اور 160 بلین ہے، باقی رہ گیا 71 بلین. اس میں لگژری آئٹم بھی میں نے آپ کو بتا دی، جو لوگ جس قسم کی چاکلیٹس کرتے ہیں اور ایووکاڈوز کرتے ہیں، اور جناب نیوزی لینڈ کا سٹیک آ رہا ہے اور آسٹریلین سٹیک آ رہا ہے، تو اس کے اوپر تو یار یہ غریب آدمیوں کا نہیں ہے نا، یہ ان کا نہیں ہے. جو غریب آدمی یا آپ عام آدمی، میں غریب کی بھی نہیں بات کروں، عام آدمی کے اوپر 2 ارب روپے کے صرف ٹیکس لگ رہے ہیں.
Pakistan's economy is facing a three-pronged challenge. Internationally, it is facing soaring prices of essential commodities such as oil, gas, wheat, sugar and unusually high shipping charges on its foreign trade. Regionally, it is grappling with the economic and financial fallout of an extremely volatile situation in Afghanistan, and domestically, It is trying to come to grips with a falling rupee value and the lack of resources to keep the prices of electricity, gas and oil in check.
Pakistan's imports are showing rising trend at a relatively faster rate due to the increased economic activity as part of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPC, particularly in the energy sector. The construction projects under CPEC require heavy machinery that has to be imported. It is also observed that the economy is currently being led both by investments as well as consumption, resulting in relatively higher levels of imports. Pakistan has been a member of the International Monetary Fund, IMF, since 1950. Due to its unpredictable nature of the economy that heavily depends upon imports, inconsistent policies of rapidly changing regimes, local capacities in public and private sectors could not flourish. This is mainly owing to continuous political instability and deteriorating law and order situation in the country. Owing to such an instability and confrontation among all stakeholders of society, unfortunately a long-term national policy that could have paved the way towards the country's economic stability could not be formulated. Consequently, owing to such a confrontation among the national level, a consensus that warranted a unified national policy that could have provided a clear direction for the stability of the economy is miserably lacking today, even after 3/4 of a century ever since our country gained independence in 1947. Repetitions of inconsistent policies of rapidly changing regimes led to an inappropriate financial model of the economy that has never been able to bring any improvement to the miseries being faced by Pakistani society. For this reason, Pakistan went to IMF on 23 occasions since its membership, recent in 2021. Let's take a look at a historical perspective of Pakistan's heavy reliance on IMF. Pakistan approached IMF first time in 1958 during the regime of Feroz Khan Noon for financial assistance of $35 million. Such a request not granted. Later, during the regime of General Ayub Khan in 1965, IMF was approached after war with India, for an amount of $510 million. The same were granted. During 1972, after another war with India in 1971, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto regime went to IMF for financial assistance of $140 million. $117 million were granted. During 1973, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto regime went for the second time to IMF for an amount of $103 million that were granted. During 1974, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto regime went for the third time to IMF for an amount of $105 million that were granted. During 1977, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto regime went for the fourth time to IMF for an amount of $112 million that were granted. During 1980, during regime of Generals Ilal Haq, IMF was approached for an amount $2.4 billion. $1.7 billion were granted. From 1988 to 2012, during different regimes of Nawaz Sharif of Muslim League and Yusuf Raza Gilani of Pakistan People's Party, IMF was requested for $18.6 billion, out of which $11.9 billion were granted. During 2008, in regime of Shaukat Aziz, IMF again was approached for an amount of $10.6 billion, out of which $7.5 billion were granted. During 2013 Nawaz Sharif regime, IMF was approached for an amount of $6.6 billion, which were granted. During 2019 Imran Khan regime, IMF was approached for an amount of $1 billion, which were granted. During 2020, Imran Khan regime, IMF was approached second time for an amount of $1 billion, which were granted. During 2021, Imran Khan regime, IMF was approached for the third time for an amount of $1 billion. This amount is under negotiation and undisbursed till presentation of this document. In total, Pakistan after its independence in 1947 under different regimes have requested IMF for bailouts at 23 occasions. As against a total amount requested $43.3 billion, it received an amount of $30.8 billion. IMF takes decisions with at least 85% of voting power. It has 189 member countries. USA has 17% voting power, Pakistan has 2.8% voting power. This goes to show that even all the IMF members other than USA were to unite for a decision, their voting power comes to 83%, nothing can move in IMF till such time the USA approves. Today Pakistan stands out among the fourth most indebted nations of the world. These countries being Greece, Ukraine, Portugal, Pakistan. This raises a question that how long will it take for Pakistan to be able to economically recover and sustain on its own? Countries like Malaysia, Maldives and Bangladesh after availing a minimal IMF assistance are on the road to fast recovery. What's wrong with ourselves? Recovery.
Pakistan's historical key economic indicators. Pakistan's history of key economic indicators since 2004 shows that its GDP remained below $10 billion annually till 2008 when it touched $10.6 billion and went to exceed $20 billion by 2012. By 2017 it surpassed $30 billion and per capita income of Pakistanis worked out to $1,630. GDP grew during the course of 2018 and in 2021 it was recorded at $47.7 billion, and per capita income in 2021 worked out to $1,542. GDP growth rate is recorded at 3.94% in 2021. GDP growth rate forecast for 2022 for developing countries suggests Maldives to grow at 14%. India at 7.5%, Bangladesh at 6.9%, Nepal at 4.1%, Pakistan at 4%, Bhutan at 3.7% and Sri Lanka at 3.4%.
During FY 2018 Pakistan's total exports picked up and reached to $30.6 billion showing a growth of 9.6% over FY 2017. Imports on the other hand also increased by 16% and touched the highest level of $67.9 billion. As a result, the trade deficit widened to $30.9 billion which was the highest since last 10 years. Pakistan's exports of goods recorded their highest level of $31.5 billion during the fiscal year 2020-21. 12% higher than the $27.9 billion recorded in 2019-20.
A summary of Pakistan's fiscal operations since 2005 to 2021 is in front of you. It will be seen that fiscal deficit as percent of GDP remained around 4% till 2007. It went up to 8.8% of GDP in 2012 as the total revenues became deficient to meet the rising expenditure. Such a fiscal deficit deteriorated to 9% of GDP in 2019 when total revenues remained at 4,900 billion while the expenditures were almost double at rupees 8,345 billion, thereby raising a fiscal gap of 3,444 billion rupees. For the year 2021, total revenues stood at rupees 6,903 billion while total expenditures were 10,306 billion raising a deficit of 3,403 billion. In this manner the fiscal deficit as percentage of GDP stood at 7.1% for the year 2021. To be fair to the sitting government, there is no quick fix available for this situation except withdrawing the generous tax exemptions and subsidies. Here a question arises whether we can reduce our imports to narrow down the deficit arising therefrom. Government is already doing that. But, considering that a major chunk of federal revenues that are coming from import duties and taxes, reducing imports will certainly increase the fiscal deficit. As for the growing fiscal deficit, being the resultant gap among the growing expenditure over the available income, it was 217 billion rupees in 2005 that grew to 929 billion in 2010 owing to excessive expenditure over available income. Such a fiscal deficit grew to Rs 2,260 billion in 2018, Rs 3,376 billion in 2020 and has worsened to Rs 3,403 in 2021. Fiscal deficit as percentage of GDP stood at 3.3% in 2005, 6.2% in 2010, 6.5% in 2018, 9% in 2019 and 7.1% in 2021.
GST at 17% imposed on imports of plant and machinery, dairy products, breads, cheese and high-end imported foods, red chilies, poultry, pharmaceutical raw materials, beauty products, food supplements, computers, baggage of overseas Pakistanis, cotton, sunflower, canola seeds, meat, mobile phones, exceeding $200, branded iodized salt, energy saver lamps, tube lights and imported remeltable scrap, jewelry and silver, high-end phones, exceeding $200. The sales tax ranges between Rs 1,750 to Rs 9,270 per phone set. Mobile phones valuing more than $200 imported in the CBU condition have also been charged to 17% sales tax. Laptop computers, notebooks, sunflower and canola hybrid seeds meant for sowing. Combined harvesters up to 5 years old. Import of pharmaceutical raw materials has been subjected to 17% sales tax, but the local supplies of the finished product will remain exempted. Fish feeds, fans for dairy farms, animal feeds, promotional and advertising material including technical literature, pamphlets, brochures and other giveaways of no commercial value, distributed free of cost by the exhibitors. Supplies of goods on items, categories including hospitals run by the federal and provincial government or charitable operating hospitals of 50 beds or more. Sewing machines of the household types. Import and supply of iodized salt bearing brand names and trademarks whether or not sold in retail packing. Raw cotton. Matchboxes. Sausages and similar products of poultry meat or meat offal excluding sold in retail packing under a brand name or trademark. Contraceptives. Solar PV panels. LVD induction lamps. SMD, LEDs, with or without ballast, with fittings and fixtures. Wind turbines including alternators and mast. Solar torches. Lanterns and related instruments. PV modules along with related components, including inverters, charge controllers and batteries.
Autonomy of State Bank of Pakistan, SBP. This proposal also includes State Bank of Pakistan SBP Amendment Bill, 2021, aiming to make the SBP as an administratively autonomous body. It is also stated that such a step is taken to protect the central bank from different regimes interfering in its internal matters. The Board of Governors Bog of SBP will be appointed on the recommendations of the government. This amendment will enable the state bank to be completely autonomous and taking decisions independent of Government of Pakistan.
My dear viewers, I do hope that I was of some assistance in explaining the mini budget proposals 2021. Thank you very much for watching.